Today, we're going to take a different spin on fatherhood advice, and I'm going to highlight an article that was recently shared with me on LinkedIn, and I shared it there on LinkedIn again as well. And the title of the article is "The Dangerous Pattern One Therapist Sees in New Fathers. When new dads don't recognize their own distress, the consequences can be dire." And it talks about how this unhealthy relationship men have with mental health. And if you dive into any of the statistics with mental health in men, they're easily slanted towards men. More men are killing themselves, more men are struggling, less men are asking for help, and only time they do get to help is when they're forced to do it based on either a court order or some type of ultimatum where they have to go get better or something happens. And this article that I'll also include in the show notes for anybody that wants to read it also highlights that there's this crucial time early on in a newborn's life where a dad's role is changing so much, our identity is changing so much, that we often don't recognize depression in those moments because it shows up in different ways than it does for, say, the mom who has maybe postpartum depression, or is that word is more even easily monitored. I remember when our kids were born, they didn't ask if I had postpartum depression. They were never worried if I had postpartum depression. They were always concerned if the mom had postpartum depression. So this article really highlights this trend that new dads need to prepare themselves more, but aren't being prepared for. And recognizing that for men, postpartum depression doesn't show up as a depression. It can often show up in unhealthy ways to express emotions as anger, anxiety, trying to be overbearing, over-controlling. That it's these other areas that we almost lean to in times of crisis, or maybe in moments where it's useful. But in this moment, it's almost the negative side. It is the negative side. It's not almost. It is the negative side because we bring this version of ourselves we don't want to bring. We don't want to bring anger, resentment, and all these other things and baggage that can come with it. And from my work with veterans, I know that when a dad starts feeling like he is the obstacle, if he looks at his wife and sees that look like, man, he's really mad right now. They see those moments, or if those moments they made the baby cry, they see those moments and they start to pull back. They realize that, like, in their mind, you know what, when I get close to my wife and our baby, everything kind of gets anxious. Like, I get anxious, they get anxious, and you realize that, like, you're the one's energy that's causing that, so you keep a distance. But then that distance prevents you from connecting. And I know that 6 months of connection with your kid in those first 6 months is so critical to the relationship at 1, 2, and 3. That there's lots of research that says that dads that don't have good connection early on have struggling developing relationships with their kids later. And this also exemplifies why the idea of parental leave that's currently stalled in Congress is so important. So if you talk or regularly communicate with your congressman or any state representative, let them know about parental leave. Let them know that these things aren't just something that looks good on a billboard, that this actually helps mental health in a way and helps relationships with kids. And if kids are the future of adults, that we're getting the next generation, this is like the first breadcrumb where either all starts crumbling down or it could all start going right. So this episode primarily for a couple of reasons. One, bring some awareness of postpartum depression among men, giving it some language so that maybe you could identify if maybe that is you. Two, bring some awareness around an issue that we haven't really just talked about here on this podcast. And three, to help you understand that you are not alone. The one thing that I've learned in my journey, and that hopefully has come through this podcast, is that you are not alone in what you're feeling. The idea in your mind is that you're alone, but you're never really alone. And that is the crux of living in 2020. That is the paradigm, the paradox in 2020. But that is also what I have committed my life to now to try to break down, is that these ideas are not unique. Your issues are not that unique. All men have these kind of innate feelings. We just really suck at talking about them. And it begins almost, there's another part in this article that it talks about where, like, around 8, 9, and 10, our emotional capacity gets had. We're told to not cry about things. We're told to be a leader, suck it up. This isn't a moment you cry. And then in those little micro moments, we're teaching kids that emotion, especially boys, that these emotions aren't healthy to express. And then fast forward to having a kid that is uncontrollably crying, creates this anxiety because they no longer know how to express a feeling, and they no longer know how to recognize a safe feeling or an unsafe feeling. And because we bottle it up, it shows up as anger. That is all I have for you guys today. I'll be back again with you guys tomorrow.